Well, the past few weeks we've been kind of hinting at things in the junk garden, showing you a few plants. Well, today we're actually showing you the entire thing. And this is one of the most popular and fun gardens that we have in the studio gardens this year. This has just been a really fun project, and it's been a kind of a conglomeration of ambassadors bringing things into the garden, and two ambassadors in particular kind of put this garden together and have helped design it. And with me today is Harriett Phillips, and she, along with Ann Berry, pretty much put this garden together. And Harriet, thanks for coming today.
Oh, Brenda, it's my pleasure.
Well, Harriet, maybe the viewers at home, I bet they want to know how to put a junk garden together, because this is just really a fun garden.
Really, Brenda, what you do is you look around your house, you look around your parents' house, you look around your grandparents' house, friends' house for things that might be containers for plants, trellises for plants, or props for plants, or just a fun way to display plants.
So, well, you've definitely achieved that here. And just moving along right over here, this is just an example of one of the things. This is so fun, and this is basically a wagon wheel.
A wagon wheel, just an old wagon wheel. And we thought we could show off the spokes better if we didn't get too many plants in there. So as the summer continues, we'll just continue to cut these plants in a pie-shaped wedge to really focus on the spokes.
That'll be good. And these two plants, your Santa Lana and your Joseph's Coat, really take to shearing really well.
Right.
That's good. Now back here, I love this. This is so much fun. What have you got here?
Well, we knew we wanted a bed. Every junk garden has to have a bed. And as you can see, our bedspread is made out of very colorful pink and red begonias. We have a carpet of white begonias around. And then we knew every bed has to have a picture behind it. So we rigged up with just some T-posts and a ladder, a trellis, and hopefully by the end of the summer, the vines will make just a beautiful picture behind the bed.
Oh, that'll be pretty. That's also really good to have a lot of things that things can climb on.
Absolutely.
A lot of vines in this garden. That's nice.
We also, Brenda, if you notice, we edged it with just old clay pots. And then you and I were talking earlier about the old, rusty metal fencing that probably our grandmothers both had around their garden.
Exactly. That's great. Now this is really fun. It's kind of the bed idea, but you've kind of taken it one step further over here.
One of our ambassadors was going to throw this out, and he said, "Do you think you want it?" And we said, "Bring it and we'll see." And it's turned out to be just a really fun piece of garden junk.
Oh, that is great. So it's a good way to recycle stuff. Don't take it to the dump. Put it in the garden. Now you've even recycled some great lawn equipment over here.
Yes, we have. Some of us unfortunately remember the old push mower, so we knew a junk garden had to have that in it. And then also we took just an old wheelbarrow, and Steve helped us rig up kind of a tiered effect on the wheelbarrow for plantings.
And that works very well. I like the portulaca in the top where it might get a little bit hot there.
That's a beautiful color.
A good planting. Now the gazebo's been here for a couple years now, but it's really, you've kind of taken it and worked it into the garden.
This is probably the least formal the gazebo has looked in a long time.
It is.
Every junk garden has to have windows in it, so we suspended the windows from the gazebo. We have old watering cans, old teapots, even an old chandelier that we just thought we couldn't do without in the gazebo.
I really like that. And outside the gazebo, if you have any kids coming, this is great.
I understand that children really love this old tricycle. We found that in one of our ambassadors' junk garden that he has himself. And we've had a lot of fun with that.
So, now the other thing that I noticed that you've done a lot is planting into things, and we've got two items right here that are just so cute.
Well, I remember my grandmother always had portulaca in a teapot on the front porch. So that's just a little bit of nostalgia. And then we've also used just common garden tools, shovels, and have planted things in there.
Oh, neat. Now, Harriet, if somebody wants to actually do a junk garden of their own, but they feel like they need a little bit of help, you all used several books.
Right, really, Brenda, all the magazines now are featuring junk gardening. But there is one book that I was given, I think, as a birthday present. It's called Garden Junk by Mary Randolph Carter. And she just has wonderful ideas of things you can do that you just couldn't imagine that you could do with stuff you have around your house.
Well, that's a fun idea. And this garden really is. It's fun. It's been fun to watch it come together and watch it grow. It's spectacular, and we really appreciate all the work that you put in
Oh,
on
it was
it.
fun. Thank you.
Well, now that we've gotten kind of an overview of the junk garden, I wanted to come back through and do a few of the plants. And the plants that we tried to put in this garden were either old-fashioned heirloom plants or plants that kind of expand in your own garden and you give them away to someone else and they give them away to someone else. And some of the plants that I wanted to show you today are some of the maybe more unusual ones or maybe old-fashioned ones that are coming back in again. And one of these is the silver lace vine. And this is a wonderful perennial vine, and if you look right down here, you can see how it gets its name. These beautiful white flowers come out in the spring, and it will pretty much bloom through the summer and into the fall for us, but you can see that they just really are a pretty, very lacy flower. Now, if we look at the leaves, they also have almost a silvery sheen to them, and they're an arrow shape. And then around the edges we have this nice crinkly border. So the whole vine has a very nice lacy look to it. Now this is actually a rampant grower, and believe it or not, a silver lace vine can cover 100 square feet in a season. So make sure that the structure that you put it on can support rampant vine growth, because it will get rather heavy before the season's over with. It is also, once established, it's very tolerant of drought. And basically, if you soak it really good once a month in the summertime, that's about all it needs. And you can grow it in a sunny area to a fairly shady area. So it's a very forgiving vine as far as the sun requirements that it has. Now, because it is such a rampant grower, you can actually cut it back to the ground. In the spring, before the leaves start to come out, you can actually just cut that off and let it regrow. And the only thing is it will delay the flowering on the vine a little bit, but midsummer it will start flowering for you, and it's probably the best way to keep it under control is just to let it start over every year for you. Now on the other side, we have another vine. That's an old-fashioned one, and this is actually a hop vine, and this is a golden hop. Now hops are actually grown, and the cone that comes on this vine is used to flavor beer. But it's also a very nice perennial plant for a perennial garden. Now, in northern areas, hops are actually grown in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, and up there they grow in full sun. But here in Oklahoma, we need to plant it in an area that has some shade and just maybe filtered light. Like you see here, we've got this filtered light. This is a good area for it. We also need to have some soil that's well drained and it's got a lot of organic matter to it. We also need to have a support for it, and actually what we should do is run a small string from the base of this plant up here to let this hop get started, because it needs something. It climbs with tendrils to get started climbing on, and a string is a very good thing for the plant to go ahead and climb up. And the golden leaves, you can see they kind of turn green after a while, but the golden leaves are very pretty in the spring. Now, some of the other interesting plants that we have right over here, this of course is one of the plants that Steve showed us last year, the Grecian pattern plant or bear's breeches. And we actually had some of these plants overwinter for us, and they're a very old-fashioned plant. They were used as the pattern for the leaves. You see the oak leaves on Grecian columns. This was the plant that they used as that pattern. So it's been around for a long time, and we're just starting to see it again. And it's a pretty bold architectural plant for the garden, and it's a nice filler right here in the shade. Now on over here we've got some that once you've planted them, they work very well. The cleome or spider flower. These annuals will go to seed for us, and we'll probably have seedlings again next year, but that's a great plant. And the only thing with it is to make sure you don't plant it up too close to an area where you're sitting, because they have an interesting smell to them. Now the acerina or climbing snapdragon that we had last year on our trellis, this year we've actually put it here On the ladder, the picture frame area, and it's already starting to climb very well, and we've got a few blooms. And the thing that we found with this plant is that it reseeded. We had several volunteer plants come up for us this year. So even though it's an annual, you'll have a lot of seeds come up every year. Now on over here we've got a newer plant, or actually a new old plant. This is called the shoe fly plant. And the reason it's got that name is because it's thought to repel whiteflies. So if you have a greenhouse and you're having whitefly problems, you might try growing one of these. Now it's a really pretty plant, and you can see right here we have a beautiful blue flower. It's white in the center, and then down in the bottom we've got some darker blue markings on it. And you can also see, as we look at the plant here, that the buds, we have these pretty papery bell-shaped buds on it. The plant then blooms, and then those bells kind of continue, and that's actually the seed pod. And we'll look in here. The other name for this plant is apple of Peru, and you can see that is the little fruit. It's kind of an apple shape. And as we're looking at this plant, the stem on it is really pretty. It's kind of a purple color on the top side. We've also got a little purple color on our seeds. And then on the bottom side, we have green. So not only do we have the flowers, but we also have that interesting coloration on the plant between the purple and the green stems. Now this is a really good plant to pair with castor beans. It can get 5 to 6 feet tall. So if you need an annual screen, you could plant some castor beans and some shoe fly plant and really screen off an area very well, very quickly for the summer. Now we've got a lot of vines in our garden, and of course the cypress vine is a very popular one, and we've used it before in our hummingbird garden. And the lacy foliage on this really is kind of different, because the vine is actually a very rampant grower, but you wouldn't think so. It looks very delicate. But once the weather starts to warm up, it grows fast, and the bright red flowers give it its other name. It's cypress vine, and also called cardinal climber because of these flowers. Now we actually got seed for this from Select Seed, and right over here we have what we'd call seedling variation, and we actually have a pink flower on it, and that is a pretty flower. And we've tried to work in quite a few vining things to vine on a lot of our different junk. Now right here is the last plant that I wanted to show you, and this is actually a bush morning glory. And it's a convolvulus. It's in the same family as morning glory, and instead of trailing, we actually just have a nice little compact bush here. We have very pretty variegated foliage, and it also has that nice morning glory flower. And I think there's one, yeah, here's one right here. We'll just show you. And again, that very papery morning glory flower with the white throat on it. And that's just a pretty look. Now these are good if you don't have room to plant your morning glory plants because you don't have anything for them to climb on. You might think about getting the bush morning glory because you still got that flower in those leaves, but you don't have to worry about the climbing part of it. So these are just a few of the plants that we've used in our junk garden, and we'll come back and see how they're filling in as the season progresses.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.